What's up, folks? This is Tony Brewer. You're listening to or watching, as the case may be, Cogitations. Cogitations is the podcast where we think about things, we contemplate them, we turn them over in our minds, and we discuss them. We have a guest in the studio today about which I'm very excited, Jack Wilkie. I'm going to forego the normal introducing the brand and stuff like that to everybody watching. You know the stuff in the show notes. Jack, introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are and where you're from and where they can get your stuff.
Sure thing. Yeah. I'm Jack Wilkie. I'm located in Dixon, Tennessee, just a little bit west of Nashville. I work for Focus Press. Folks, if you haven't heard of me, most folks have heard of Dr. Brad Harrub, who I work with. So we do apologetics, culture, Christian family kind of stuff. And so I've written a few books with Focus Press, and I do the Think Deeper podcast. And my site, Church Reset, which is you can get at jackwilkie.com. So easy enough to find that way. And that's a little bit about who I am.
Jack, for a moment, though, you wrote a good book called Church Reset.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
I know you're probably not prepared, but could you maybe give give an elevator pitch for that book, if you don't mind?
Yeah, it's just the idea, the tagline for it was, shouldn't church be more? And it was this idea of, man, you go home every Sunday and think we're really supposed to be a family, but it's more of a business. It's more of a come to the building and do stuff together there and call it good for the week, where, the one another commandments are things we need to be doing in each other's homes and really sharing our lives and that kind of thing. And so it's kind of an exploration of that and what it was meant to be, I guess, is the idea.
I've often said, and I wish I could take credit for having this epiphany and arriving at this on my own. But I've often said that, sorry, I got to get back where I say it. I've often said that I am 100% convinced that the Church of Christ, that is the churches that grew in the United States out of the Restoration movement, have the correct pattern for first century doctrine, and the denominations do not. I, however, think it's reversed when it comes to practice. I do think the denominations beat the pants off of us, and they practice first century Christianity according to the pattern.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. And, I don't know if I said it in the book, but I've written it elsewhere that that was kind of the focus of the restoration was doctrine. And we didn't really think about restoring practice. And I think there's some restoration that needs to happen there still to get back to just kind of Monday through Saturday. We restored Sunday. Now we need to restore Monday through Saturday.
Good call there. So that's a good book, and I think you can probably order it from Focus Press,
Yeah,
Amazon.
it's on Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got a copy from Amazon. Like if I'm in Canada, and you can get it in Canada through Amazon. I don't know if Focus Press. I know Apologetics Press doesn't ship anything to Canada that I'm aware. You know what? Maybe y'all better talk to Apologetics Press before I start speaking on their behalf. Well, you're here for a purpose this morning, Jack Wilkie. Back in 2020, and what did we? Now I'm looking for there it is. The Church of Christ invented cancel culture, May 11, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I remember covering this article, and I'm trying to get. Well, I'm sorry. I'm trying to find our questions. I got interview questions, so I can get to them here.
You ship me an email with them if
I sure did. Right here they are.
All
right. I think I was going to try to put them on my phone where I could see you. Well, I'm just going to read this. So here's some questions we can use for the podcast. We're just going to walk down this, and I covered this back in 2020 because, Jack, you were being dragged mercilessly.
Yeah.
And not that you need anybody to defend you, but I was so intrigued with the article, and it was something that I had dealt with, which is cancel culture. I have my own personal stories about it. But we'll just do the first question. When you sat down to write The Church of Christ Invented Cancel Culture, which is the title of the article, what was going through your mind, and what pushed you to hit publish on something that was going to ruffle a little bit of feathers?
It has been a few years, and so it's kind of hard to remember. If memory serves, it was more in defense of a friend or two of mine who were going through it. And as I say in the article, I'd had my own turn. I think a lot of us, as you said, you've been there. You get that point where you're kind of the main character of church controversy there for a week or two, and
Sure.
man, it feels like everybody hates you, and it's really just a very loud minority. Most people had no idea what was going on, but man, when people come after you, they really go hard. And so I'd had some friends going through it. Guys that had lost their jobs, guys that had lost, all their friends or whatever else, you're a false teacher, a heretic, and we can never talk again kind of thing. It's like, really? I mean, as we'll get to, there's a time for kind of taking a stand, but man, it sure seems petty sometimes.
Absolutely. And I remember the reason I covered it is because of the accusation that was being levied against you, that you were just hateful towards the Church of Christ.
Right. And that, I get that a lot. I'm sure you get some of that yourself.
I'm a liberal.
Yeah. Well, but the one I get is you're so negative about the church.
Yep.
And it's like, I love the church, and saying we can do better, we can grow, things like that. That's not being negative. That is
No.
like I'm not negative about myself when I go to the gym or I eat healthy or whatever. Like I'm trying to do better. Like that's not a negativity. This is health. This is growth. This is what you do. And so that was one of the big critiques of that is like, oh, you just think the church can't do anything right. Like, no, if there's a problem, we should root it out. We should work on it. So
I no comment. I mean, that's enough. I mean, I just couldn't understand it. And here's again, without knowing you, this is the reason I said let's just see if we can put a human spin on this. I want you to picture that you have seen the cancel culture in action from Christians, and you see the outrage that's going on in the media and on social media, and it's in the conversation. They were really trying to figure out about whether or not social media could have all of the protections of a platform and privileges of a platform, but and some of the privileges of a publisher as well.
mm-hmm.
And social media sets funny, so it's a weird conversation anyway. And it may have been also a couple of years or just a year after the great adpocalypse that had come about with Steven Crowder. The YouTube landscape changed greatly. Well, it's because of the adpocalypse. It's because of cancel culture. I remember Dave Chappelle starting a special where he was making fun of cancel culture. He's like, he was mocking certain individuals, and somebody thought he was talking about Trump, and the crowd thought he was talking about conservatives, and he goes,
mm-hmm.
No, that's you.
Mm-hmm.
You people are like that. That's why I don't want to go perform anymore. It's because of cancel culture. And if I'm a human being putting myself in your shoes, which is what I think empathy is, I can feel the frustration and see the world talking about cancel culture, and then we see how our brethren treat one another, and I can see you going, well, the Church of Christ invented cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And there were people that were dragging you, thinking as if they thought that you actually literally meant the Church of Christ invented cancel culture.
Right. I mean, it's a phrase. It's you've seen it on TV shows, and like it's something people say. Not that I'm endorsing the show, but Seinfeld, George Costanza. I invented. It's not me. It's not like it's a way you say like I've been doing that forever. We have a history of that kind of thing. It doesn't mean you literally were the first person to do it. It's
yes,
and
or it means you. It means you're the best at it.
Right. You've got it down to a science almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so to say the Churches of Christ invented cancel culture, even the whole Christendom world had it before the Churches of Christ as such existed, the Restoration or whatever else. But the whole point was we just do it really well, and we do a lot of it. And so that was what I was trying to get at with that.
Yes. And as we go through here, we're going to bring out, I think, a lot of times we perform cancel culture in the name of being godly and church discipline.
Right.
So that's really when the podcast is going to be good. So let's walk through these questions real quick then. So the title got that's an understatement. The title got attention, some good, some bad. Why did you choose to phrase it that way? I know we've already talked about it, but was it strategic? Did it work the way you hoped, or did it backfire? And again, you may not even be able to answer this. You've slept since then.
Right. I I'm not real good at titles, and so I just threw it out there, kind of thinking in that sense of, oh, well, we invented it, of course, like that, just being tongue in cheek a little bit,
Yep.
and that's all I thought about it. Didn't give it a second thought, and that, if I was trying to be, like trying to get traffic, that would have been that would have been the title I would have gone with. I was
That
just putting something on there, and
I yeah. I
so
was going to say, if you were trying to get that reaction, that was the title for it.
right, and I had no intention, and looking back is like, well, I don't know. I mean, that I didn't realize people were gonna take it that way. I feel like that's more their fault than mine because it is a
Yeah.
phrase. It's not like I'm using some obscure reference or anything.
Well, I'll frame it a little bit. Do you think maybe that you were so naive that you expected a little bit of grace from your brothers and sisters in Christ, and perhaps they would uh, run that title through the filter of love believes all things?
I don't think so because the funny thing is, it's they proved the point so beautifully with that. Like, how
Oh,
mad they
hush your
got
mouth.
and how much of, just pushback it got. It was like, "That's exactly it. I'm the bad guy, of the church of the week for the church,
Yep.
because of an article title." And we can't even take a little bit of self-reflection as what we do as the church, and just the irony of they can't even realize that they immediately jumped in to do what I said we were doing. And so, yeah, you know, as I said, I'd kind of had my turns before this article, and this
Yep.
was just another one of them. So it wasn't surprising, I guess.
I'm with you. So looking back, this is not in the list of questions. This is something I just come up with. I have an answer. I think the answer is yes. Do you think the juice was worth the squeeze?
Yeah, I think so. I think getting these conversations out, I know you've done a lot of content online. I've done a lot of content online. You've probably seen the same thing I have. It's when you talk about these idiosyncrasies, these tendencies, whatever you want to call them in the churches of Christ, it starts a conversation because a lot of people come out of the woodwork going, yeah, we do that. And that's not good. I've been there, or whatever else. And I think it's very much worth having these conversations. And that's where you kind of connect with people, connect with other people who have been thrown under the bus, and people who are tired of it, people who maybe haven't been there but have seen it happen and go, yeah, we do need to stop this. It's really a good thing.
Yep. The pointing elephants in the room, like the elephants in the room, that you had an article titled something similar to that, pointing out elephants in rooms
Yeah, but
or
that was about
something.
kind of women running the church. But yeah, I
Yeah.
that's a phrase I like using, is no indoor elephants. I mean, we're
Yeah.
just not gonna do it.
That's a good one. No indoor elephants. Yeah. I remember this book from a child, and lo and behold, as I'm learning about Jordan Peterson, I see him, and he's given a lecture based on that book. And the book is called "There's No Such Thing as Dragons."
Hmm.
And the little boy has this little bitty dragon, and it's real. I mean, it's in the book, it's real, but
Mhm.
maybe only he can see it, or either the parents can see it, but they ignore it. And so he says, "Mom, I've got a dragon. There's a dragon in my room. Dad, there's a dragon in my room." Well, there's no such thing as dragons. And each page of the book, it's a children's book. Well,
Mhm.
each time the kid's trying to say there's a dragon, the dragon is getting bigger
Uh-huh.
until the dragon gets so big, its head is sticking out the gable end, its tail sticking out the back door, and it just puts its legs up and it runs off with the house. So Jordan Peterson said, if you have dragons in your house and you ignore them, you may, as a man, come home from work one day and find your home has got up and left, meaning your wife and children are gone,
Mm,
or your world has crashed down.
right.
So I think the juice for me will always be worth the squeeze, because we have to bring these conversations to the surface.
100%. I agree. And as I said, either people have seen it and they know, or you kind of are bringing it to their attention. Not again to bash the church and anything like that, but like, again, it's a chance to do better.
Yes. I think of whenever Barack Obama was running for office, either the first or the second time, I can't remember, he actually said something to the effect of how much he loved the United States of America, but he wants to fundamentally change it. Well, I love my wife, and I don't want to fundamentally change her.
Right.
There's some things, there's some minutia that I'd like to change. You know, maybe she cooks biscuits a little bit overdone.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the core. That's not her immutable traits that
Right.
I love, that I fell in love with.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess immutable wouldn't even be the right word. You know, I fell in love with how she acts, things that she's able to change, but I
Right.
don't want her to.
Right. Well, and it goes back to what you were saying about the restoration earlier and what we've gotten right. Like, that's why I'm still here. That's why you're still here. As I think, like, the bones, the structure, the foundation we have is the best one out there. But that doesn't mean, some touch ups here and there are not in order. I mean, there's always going to be there's
Absolutely.
because we're humans, and so I don't. There's always such resistance to that, and it's like, I don't know. People take it personally or whatever, but it's not personal. It's about all of us doing better. So
That's it. Amen. All right. Question number 3. Ooh, before we go to question number 3, Garland Elkins is somebody that I can't even, and I know this is a little bit of childish naivety, but I can't even picture Garland Elkins as somebody who committed a sin. Okay.
mm,
But even he, as far as I know, he could have said it the last day of his life, but I heard it from him when he was in his 90s that the biggest room in his life is a room of improvement.
yeah.
Well, that ought to be our default.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever congregation I'm in, it's room for improvement, if nothing else, because it let me in the door.
Right.
So, anyway, all right. Question number 3. Looking back several years later, I guess 5 years later, has anything happened since that's either confirmed or refined your perspective? I've got it worded, would you write the same piece today? I don't think that's a decent question to consider. Do you think the article is just as relevant today as it was when you wrote it?
I think it has relevance. I definitely I smile a little bit. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I've had my turn again since I wrote the article.
Surely not.
Oh yeah, Think Deeper podcast. We've especially one particular episode got us lots of friends and articles written about us and sermons preached about us, and
Is one on alcohol?
that one, yeah. And
Look, just for our listeners, I disagree with Jack on his position on alcohol. I'm in fellowship with Jack because of his position on alcohol. If you want to know more about that, send me a message. I'll do an episode on it. And if you want me and Jack to fight about it, send me a message and I'll see if we can get him back and we can fight about it. Other than that, get her done. All right.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and that was my view. Is like, hey, here's our take on it, and that was just not allowed. So that kind of helped confirm it. To the question of would I write it again? I did write one a couple years later, and this might be getting ahead of some of the other topics you want to cover, so I don't
It's
want to go
all
out of
good.
order here. But I wrote almost like a part 2, even though it wasn't intentionally a part 2. But I called it the cowardly disfellowship of the church police or the brotherhood police or something like that.
Yeah.
Because for me, what I learned from that one is we'll have people call us a false teacher, call us, heretics, call us whatever name you want to pull out, which those are serious accusations. I don't see any way around it. A false teacher is going to hell, and they're probably leading other people to hell. Like if
Ain't no probably.
yeah, and so you got to stand behind that. So people will call you a false teacher, and they'll get real mad for a month or two, and it's the heat of the moment. And
Yep.
then they'll just come back around like, well, hang on a second. If I'm a false teacher, you should not be anywhere near me. You should
Yep.
not. You should be driving me out of the church. You should be staying on this if you think I'm a false teacher. And they
That's
won't.
it.
They will
No.
throw that out in the heat of the moment and then won't do anything with it. Like, well, then you don't really believe what you're saying. You're being
Right.
dishonest. You're just using a pejorative. You're using reaching for the strongest term you can use to make your point. You can say you disagree with me. You can say I'm wrong.
Yeah.
You should. I think people are wrong. People think I'm wrong. That's how it's going to work.
Yep.
That doesn't make somebody a false teacher, but they will use that because of the power that it carries, but then they won't live like they believe that power.
It's just like a leftist calling somebody a racist, sexist,
Oh, yeah.
bigot, homophobe.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I got a kind of an inkling that there's nobody alive in the United States today that's actually racist, categorically speaking. There's people that don't like other folks, and when they want to be insulting, they just grab low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
I think that's what most of it is.
Yeah.
Like this girl, like this white girl that called the.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she's racist. I think she was trying to be as insulting and mean as she could in the moment because she was frustrated and angry.
Mm-hmm.
Don't condone it, but I don't
Right.
think she's racist.
Right.
Same way with other. I think I can put that into the church.
Exactly. I mean, it's the theological version of the same thing of just, if I use this term on you, I win the argument.
Yep.
Well, no, you don't, actually. There's a discussion to be had here, but it's like, well, I called you false teacher, so game over. Okay. Well, where do we go now? I mean,
I have a litmus test for when I talk to people about what I consider areas of scruple. I consider tobacco use an area of scruple. Okay. I have had conversation with someone I was working with pretty closely at the time, and they were like, no, it's an absolute sin. If you use tobacco, you are straight to hell unless you repent, ... And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Let's live in that world for a minute. If it is the case that tobacco use is sinful, it's open rebellion to God, that unrepented of will send a person straight to hell. Okay. You have to then withdraw fellowship from every person
yep.
who uses tobacco. And I knew a person he was friends with and thought a lot of that was older than him that dipped snuff. And I said, you have talked about how much you love him. Are you willing to go to him and make this a deal, and then you withdraw fellowship from him if he don't quit? That's not a litmus test for whether it's right or wrong. That's a litmus test on whether or not you're actually convicted about it.
Right. Put your money where your mouth is, for sure.
Most folks ain't.
Right.
Most
and
folks
I mean,
ain't.
We'll get to some of this in the other question. I'll save some of the thoughts because you've got some good topics to cover here, and it'll
Awesome.
come up again. So,
all right, number next, and folks, we will, and Jack, I can go as long as we need to go to cover this, but we typically shoot for about an hour.
That works.
And we can go for an hour, hour and a half. If you need to jet out, I can always close everything down. So
sure. I can go about 12, 15.
Cool beans. All right. What actually is cancel culture in functional terms, and how is that fundamentally different from biblical church discipline or something like publicly withdrawing fellowship or marking someone, as in Romans 16:17? So I think this is where the meat of the podcast starts.
Yeah, and it's really important that you get to this side of it, because there is a time and a place for preachers should be fired for certain things. Fellowship should be withdrawn for certain things like that. And there's a biblical way to do that. The difference with the cancel culture thing is kind of the online mob behavior. It's kind of drawn attention to it. I had one, this is 10 years ago now. A guy bought Facebook ads to tell people to boycott Focus Press and Jack Wilkie because of an article I wrote. And it's like, that is not any kind of Matthew 18 behavior. That's not any, you can't find that in scripture. Like, what are you really trying to do here? And that to me is the cancel culture thing. Is there's a popularity contest issue. There's an influence side of it, and obviously the social media thing amplifies this whole thing. But, and in the church, we've got you're not invited to such and such lectureship anymore. And you're not, like all of those things. And, I think the biggest thing is cancel culture is about going for blood. You're out to take a person down. Not, I mean, you see Priscilla and Aquila with Apollos in Acts 18. Cancel culture would have been shouting him down and basically running him out of the room. Christian love was pull him over to the side and have that chat to say, hey, that's you're not right on this one.
Yeah.
And have that discussion. You see, Paul, Galatians 2 with Peter. He says, I opposed him to his face. And that was kind of necessary to publicly confront Peter to say, you can't do this, man. I mean, this is wrong the way you're treating the Gentile brothers. That wasn't cancel culture. That wasn't, all right, everybody get up, we're leaving Peter here by himself. I mean, that's not the way to handle it.
And Paul didn't write a bunch of letters to the other churches saying, hey, I've uncovered something you need to know. Now, he did put it in the book of Galatians, so that's inspired by the Holy Ghost, so that served a purpose. But I don't think if I'm not inspired to write about a confrontation that I've had with somebody in a situation like that, it's not that I would never speak of it again, but I wouldn't try to get everybody else to change how they treat that person.
Mm-hmm.
First off, it sounded like Peter repented.
Right.
So Paul was saying, hey, this is big enough, and the fact that we need to be the gospel is for all is big enough that even amongst the apostles, we had to set some things straight.
There's another angle of this that I think is really important, is because it's all or nothing, then you can't have minor disagreements, and minor disagreements are so healthy. And I see this happen, with Presbyterian and Baptist guys I follow, where they'll
Yeah.
write and be like, well, so-and-so said this, and no, he's wrong, and here's why. And then they'll go hang out together, and it's
Yeah.
okay. And I've done that a couple of times where I reference, a brother in an article and say, well, he wrote this, and here's why I disagree. And even then, it feels like, whoa, getting really confrontational there. It shouldn't be. We're
No.
working on the same team in the same direction, and I can think somebody's badly wrong about something. It shouldn't cost us our fellowship. It shouldn't cost us, me thinking somebody's not going to heaven or they think I'm not. I mean, any of those things. And so, because it's all or nothing, there's no working out the details. There's no
Yeah.
minor disagreements. It's all huge blowups.
Yeah. Oh, I saw it with the Renewed Heaven, Renewed Earth guys.
Oh man.
Listen, I have studied and studied and studied, and the way I would teach eschatology and the way I would teach 1 Peter 3, second Peter 3, excuse me. I don't know if I know the Bible or not. Anyway, the way I would teach 2 Peter 3 is that the interpretation allows, well, I'll just tell you how I teach it. At the end of time, God is going to reduce the force that keeps the neutrons and the protons separate in atoms is just going to be removed, and everything's going to collapse to a molecular singularity, and then it's going to be reused, because I don't see God annihilating anything he's ever created. It's just going to be subsumed into the heavenly realm, because we're going to be extant, existential in nature, and that's where we're going to be, in heaven. And that's technically a recreated earth doctrine, and I think that the text allows for that.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't mean I'm going to hell.
Right.
And because of cancel culture, that means that technically, if I wanted to be invited to the lectureships, if I wanted to be invited to do gospel meetings, stuff like that, I couldn't have somebody like my friend Josh Pappas on, where we could actually talk about the minutia of our renewed heaven, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
doctrine. And I know I've had a 3-hour conversation with Josh Pappas. He doesn't believe anything that's going to keep anybody out of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
But yet he's canceled in the mainstream churches of Christ and the Bible Belt in the United States. He'll never speak at Polishing the Pulpit. He'll never speak at the Memphis School of Preaching lectureships. He'll never speak. I don't know. It's just, and they need him. Like he's a good one.
And that's, I had a friend in the same boat, same issue. And that was one of the ones I was drawing on when I wrote the article originally, was seeing just the awful stuff somebody was put through for believing that, and mischaracterized, and, oh, well, you're just a Jehovah's Witness now. Like, man, take a minute to hear your brother out. Take a minute to hear what they're saying. He's not a Jehovah's Witness. He's not, eschatology's hard, and there's a little bit of room to understand differently on these things. And, that kind of gets down to the heart of this whole thing is, yes, there's a time and a place for disfellowship and discipline and things like that. There also has to be a time and a place to agree to disagree.
Yep.
And I see so little of that allowed in certain corners of the church. And you can just start listing issues. And if I did, I'd get in trouble. You brought up the alcohol thing, the New Heaven, New Earth thing, Christmas and Easter, and what somebody does with that, and things like that. Like, yeah, I think there's a right interpretation that you can see it a little bit differently than me,
And I
and we're
think my
still going to heaven
interpretation is
together.
right.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of the other
And
thing.
yours
Well,
is wrong.
they're like, "Well, I've got the Bible." Like, "Well, so do I. I can show mine
Guarantee
biblically.
it.
I didn't just make this up, like it's but this idea that, well, if you're just looking at it the right way, everybody's going to think the exact same thing. Humans don't work that way, and there's grace for every now and then you're allowed to be wrong on something.
Yeah.
There's got to be minor things, and they're not all major things.
So I disagree with Brad Harab's position on the indwelling and the gift of the Holy Spirit. I feel like it is the height of childish naivety and maybe a little bit of arrogance to think that I alone possess the keystone piece of information that he has never heard that would cause him to change his mind.
But that's how it gets framed, though, as well. Clearly, you've never heard this argument, and if once I've presented the argument to you, if you still disagree with it, well, then you're just dishonest.
That's
Like,
it.
people's minds don't change that quickly. Even if somebody's mind changes, it usually takes years to come off of a major position, and
Yes, it
so
does.
I don't know. It's very unrealistic about how we relate to each other.
That it is. That it is. All right. Number 5. We've seen that church discipline can be both individual and corporate, depending on the context. What do you think the right balance is there? Where do things tend to go wrong when individuals try to take on a role that was meant for the local congregation or its elders?
Yeah, that's a hard one. There's
Thank
guys I
you.
think of right now where it's like, you should not be preaching. You should be out of the pulpit. Your church should let you go, and nobody else should hire you, because I mean, legitimate, not like minor gripes, like legitimate
Yeah.
theological liberalism. I can't. What am I supposed to call their? Somebody tried to do that with a church I was at one time. Call up and say, you need to fire Jack. Like, it doesn't work that way, okay? And
Yeah.
on a personal level, there's things I can do, but I mean, it's not. We don't have the Pope. We don't have the Jerusalem
Yeah.
Council, even Acts 15. Like we don't have
Right.
those kinds of things, and so where there are public ministries, I think it's okay to put out, I disagree with this guy, or to
Yeah.
push back on things. I think that's okay. But as far as like
Mm.
the and even a practice of a level of fellowship, I'm not going to attend churches where certain guys preach.
Sure.
Like, and that's a personal thing. Like I can't go in there and demand they fire him. Like that's
Right.
I wish they would. I think they should. But what power do I have on this? And
Yeah.
so I think that's kind of one of the social media things, is it gives us this sense of power. That's not a jurisdiction God has given us. If the local church there and its leadership are tolerating something, even in the 7 churches of Asia in Revelation 2 and 3, you've got good churches, you've got churches that are straying. He doesn't tell the good churches, all right, now go over and, destroy the other one or take them down. Like, Jesus is handling the lampstands, and I've got to
Yeah.
trust that.
And something to consider too, because as we are talking about this, and I am hearing you talk about it, I'm like, I've done all this stuff in the past. Everything we're talking about today, everything we're going to talk about today that we shouldn't do, or that we're going to say you shouldn't do, or then can't do and be right with God, I've done it all. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. It was 2015, the first time I ever got a Facebook profile, and I did it for the sole purpose of digital evangelism.
Mm.
And if I could go back and still be the man I am today and change all that stuff, there's probably some stuff I'd change. But if it would make me different than who I am, I wouldn't change any of it. Even though a lot of it was terrible and hard, and a lot of it was my own fault.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Been there with that one too. Nobody should have handed 21-year-old Jack a laptop and a Google Blogspot account. Man, I was driving crazy traffic as a 21-year-old. Like, why on earth was anybody paying attention to what I had to say?
Yeah.
And as you say, look back, I'm like, that was dumb. But as you say, you grow from it, you learn, and
Yep.
stuff that I was posting about that I had no business talking about. But
Oh man, I
uh,
thought it was my job to correct everything that was wrong that come across my timeline.
Yep.
And Facebook knew I'd comment on it, so it put it there.
They set us
crazy.
up pretty well for those.
Yeah, they do. All right. Number next. Oh, let's see. Yeah, where do things go wrong when individuals try to take on a role that was meant for the local congregation? We talked about that. I think we've covered it. It's just it goes wrong because you're too empowered. There's no checks and balances.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a problem with you, Jack, and we're face to face, to borrow wisdom that I've heard from like Jordan Peterson, some of these other lectures that I've listened to in the last few years, if nothing else, there's a credible threat of violence whenever we're in front of one another, and that keeps the conversation respectful.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
If that's the only thing that keeps it respectful, at least it's that.
Right.
So and you mentioned it earlier. It may have been before the show, or it may have been on the show. We're not gonna say as much and go as far whenever we've got this screen between us, or
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, whenever we don't have the screen between us.
Well, that's the other thing about it is too, a lot of people, I'm Jack Wilkie, the guy that writes online. To a lot of people, you're Tony, the podcast guy, the writing
Yeah.
guy, whatever. They don't know Jack, the husband and father, Jack, the local church member, Jack, the whatever else. Like, and the people that do might see something I write and roll their eyes and be like, oh, he's on that one again. He's going after that idea. Like, and that's it. And like, there's not a hostility. There's not they might think, oh, even takes they disagree with, okay, he's being a knucklehead on that one.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's cool.
Yep.
But to other people, to the online culture, this is that guy, and you and your takes are inseparable, and that's all you are. And I don't think that's a real healthy thing. I brought up earlier somebody phone calling. It was funny. The voicemail went to my office as the preacher there. Jack Wilkie, he wrote this article, and he should not be your preacher there. This woman trying to get me fired via the phone. I don't know who she was, where she was calling from, or whatever. I joke about that, but there are real life situations where people get in the elders' ears, people from other churches,
Oh, yeah.
and the elders are like, "Hey, we're fine with him. We think he's on the straight and narrow. We agree with what he's teaching, but we're hearing a lot of things from the brethren, from the church, and then the next county. There's people, and at Focus Press, Brad Harrop has been uninvited from 4 or 5 gospel meetings in the last year or two, where the church had no problem with him, but the churches around them started saying, "Oh, you can't have him there.
Yeah.
You can't." I'm sorry, that how is that your business? How is
Yeah,
that?
That's nothing but cancel culture.
It is,
And it's vindictive behavior, by the way.
the antidote to that is the local church going, we're not playing that game. We don't do this stuff. We are not going to let you strong arm us into getting rid of a guy we agree with.
Yep.
But that's where I get really frustrated, is the people who allow it to perpetuate by saying, we'll fire the preacher, we'll uninvite the guy, I'll stop hanging out with my friends because you want me to. No, don't do that.
Yeah. Oh man, my circle of friends is very, very small. Because of that, like, loyalty is, I'm 47. I guess I'm Gen X. I'm a younger side of Gen X. I was born in 1977. But still, we grew up, man, and self-sufficient. I worked on the farm, the apple farm, stuff like that. My uncle had sawmills. We were just a different breed of people, and loyalty was the big concern. Like, you wanted people around you that were going to be loyal. And I've never understood how, if Barry Odell is one of my very close friends, if you brought me a video of him doing something nefarious, I wouldn't even believe it at first. I'd just be like, look, don't show me that. I'll go talk to Barry.
Right.
I don't care at this point. Now, don't get me wrong. I guess that's even within reason. I need to mitigate some of that, but I don't know. Even if it were just a crazy stranger that I didn't know, I think I'd just say, go kick rocks off a cliff and jump after them.
Yeah. Well, the Proverbs say, the first is to give his case seems right until the other examines him. There's a lot of that going on. Oh, so-and-so is a false teacher. Oh no. Okay, we got a distance. Why is he a false teacher? Well, I think that. We've had that happen, and I don't know. I think, and someone in the comments here makes the point about it. violating autonomous congregations. I mean, we say
Yeah.
our churches are autonomous, and then we do this thing, and we do kind of the approved, list of sound congregations, and the people who
Yeah.
are invited, as you said, the lectureships or whatever it may be. We've got like these unofficial de facto lists, and so you have a little mini denomination within a denomination. And
Yes.
is one of the things I also get heat for is I say, look, we don't have a creed and a confession because we don't write it down, but a lot of people have one. Everyone has
Yep.
one in the back of their heads. Everyone
Yeah,
has
they
a
do.
thing where a certain doctrinal line you cross, you're out, and that's your creed and your confession. And the problem is, it's you don't know anybody's, and so you don't know when you're going to cross over it, and they're just gonna, again, that cancellation is going to come in, and so it's not healthy to have these very very loosely held on to relationships. As you say, your good friend, give them a call, stick with
Yeah.
them, work through stuff.
Exactly. That used to be a value with amongst people. Something that I've thought about for a while. It's not in our little list of questions, but I remember going through school and hearing the different viewpoints of these giants of faith in the past. Like Guyan Woods and his gift of the Holy Spirit, indwelling, all that good stuff. Foy Wallace, and somebody else arguing about whether or not when we die we go straight to heaven or we go to paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a bunch of other stuff. And I'm like, why did people know all of these people's different viewpoints? I think it's because they argued about them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'd be in people's homes, and like if Foy Wallace and VP Black had a disagreement about the minutia, they would have a after dinner conversation.
Right.
And everybody at the house would sit around drinking coffee and eating crumpets and soaking up these two giants of faith arguing. And they were modeling behavior that they can believe these two different views and still be brethren.
Mm-hmm. Get up and shake each other's hands at the end of it.
Yeah.
That needs to happen. And that, I mean, as you say, you just take a lineup of those guys and put their lists out there. How many of them would be fired from a church today? Would be blacklisted from the such and such conference or lectureship or whatever else? Because, and yet the people will go to that conference and lectureship and talk about how great those guys are. And you kind of think about Jesus. I think it's Matthew 23 talking about you build monuments to the prophets,
Yep.
and then when there's one among you, you kill them. And
That's it.
it's kind of that same thing. Like, oh, they can be heroes in the past, but right now, if they were among you, you wouldn't
You got that
hang
right.
out with them. And so I think with that, and I don't know if you know Mike and Jake Hysaw. They run a YouTube channel and do a lot of like historical stuff. They do a great job of highlighting just how much debate and discuss all those things you just talked about. I really enjoy the stuff they put out to show there's not like this one small list of allowed opinions in the churches of Christ historically. Like we've had those disagreements, as you're saying.
Yep. I think social media wasn't the what's the phrase, death knell?
Mm-hmm.
But it contributed, it exacerbated the problem. And
Right.
social media connects us more, but it actually not ostracizes, it sections us off into echo chambers.
It does. It revealed and magnified, I guess, a problem that was already there.
Yeah. And between us chickens, I'm not so sure that social media for the church might not be a net negative. However, that doesn't mean I think we need to get off of it, because I certainly don't want to seed ground of the devil. So I don't know. Aaron and I have talked about that before.
Yeah. It definitely has its drawbacks, and that's, we're trying to use it for good as much as we can, but these are real issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get it. Let's get it. What we got here. Number 6, Romans 16:17 gets used a lot, sometimes out of context. You and I both know that warning brethren about error is biblical. But why is it that so many misunderstand that passage and turn it into a license to publicly blast somebody on social media? And we'll probably camp here for a minute.
Mm-hmm. In this whole conversation, my favorite line on this was one of my preaching school instructors, Warren Wilcox. He said, it's getting to the point where I think my wife and I might be the only ones who are saved, and I'm not too sure about her.
Preach it, man.
And he's making a mockery of when you get in this habit of mark and avoid and calling out the false teacher. It can become a bit of a dopamine hit, kind of like, all right, who's the next giant to slay? Who's the next
Yeah.
dragon to take down? Whatever it may be. And, there is a time and a place. There has to be. I mean, that's, the balance that we have here. Or there are people that you need to say, not that guy and not that
Yep.
doctrine.
Yep.
But you've got to have, as I said earlier, you have to have secondary matters. And this just makes everything a primary matter. Every disagreement is somebody I'm going to mark and avoid. And you get to the point where, as you kind of got at earlier, if we laid everybody's beliefs about everything out on the table and just had everybody go and just kind of cross off with a red pin every disqualifying thing, how many people are left?
Not
Nobody.
much.
Barely anybody. I mean, you might be shocked at how many of your own friends you lose.
Yeah.
And so, it is a very, you look at Paul, I mean, he calls people out by name, Alexander the Coppersmith and Hymenaeus and, like all those, there's a few of those in the New Testament, but there's also a lot of every epistle is a correction. Every epistle is do better,
that it
repent, get back on track. But, there's got to be different levels of it.
Yeah. The, something I want to hit on while we're on this question as well. Not everybody is qualified to make that public blast, even when it's needed. And at the sake of irony, I'll talk about John D. Berry. It is very sad. I saw the videos. He can't get past that. Like he's gone off. Who am I? Who is Tony? I'm a nobody. That needed to be a Melvin Ote. That needed to be a Brad Harrop. That needed to be a Glenn Colley or a Higginbotham or a Hitchcock. It didn't need to be a Tony. Now, I don't know how to articulate that. I can't, in other words, that's the answer, but I can't show my work. I think it has to do something with Galatians chapter 6:1, ye which are spiritual, restore such a one.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that was in the context of the charismatic. But a 21st century application, the implication that's at least reasonable inference is the correction, can't just anybody go and do the correction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what there's. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but what do you think? Could you help me articulate that better? Maybe show my work. What am I getting at? Why did it not bother me whenever Brad Harrop called out Harding or Melvin Ote write a post about John D. Berry, but this 2-bit podcaster with 150,000 subscribers or 150 subscribers, he did.
Yeah, I didn't like the way that one went down either. And I feel the other thing is there's also layers of like somebody who kind of has standing, somebody who, we're not talking about somebody who had a reputation for being off the deep end. Anybody can go call out, a Pepperdine, something, like certain things like that. Somebody who kind of is in that circle should be handling them, kind of thing. And we talked earlier about Paul and Peter.
Yeah.
I really wasn't Timothy's place to, as you're saying, and like push comes to shove, he's the only guy that can do it. Okay. But he wasn't the only guy that can do it. And,
I got it.
And I fully agree with the public teaching can be confronted publicly and all that. But I think there was also a layer of why was nobody on the phone first? Why did this get exposed in this way? And I'm not saying that the guy who started the whole thing was doing this, but this is one of the perverse incentives of social media is you get clout by taking down, by putting things out. And I'm not saying, I don't know motives. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that can happen. And a good guard against that is let's go through proper respected channels to handle these things.
Yes.
So, not that he's an elder, but, in the First Timothy, with 5 or 6 cents of, take a couple witnesses. If you're going to go to an elder, if you're going to go to somebody who kind of has a reputation, has standing, don't take this lightly. Don't
Yeah.
make a social media post. Like that.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
It's low effort.
Hmm.
It all it does is get you clout or perceived clout,
Well, and what's the
and
resolution? It
it
doesn't have one.
and it also doesn't give the person you're making the post about an off ramp.
Right.
It makes them double down.
Hmm.
You
Right.
know.
Yeah. It immediate isolates, immediately puts people in camps, and that's not the way to handle this.
Yep. You don't hire an electrician to fix a leaking faucet. Yeah, not everybody. I don't think everybody's qualified to do the public thing. I just don't.
Yeah.
And it may be, I can't remember, the definition of pornography that come out of Congress or the courts or something.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly what it is, but you'll know it when you see it.
Yeah.
That may be what this is. I don't know. I wish I had more concrete. I wish I could show my work better.
Right.
Ooh, let me do this real quick. I want to read my little, it's just just a couple hundred words maybe. Okay, here's my golden rule of Facebook ministry, and this will help us with the rest of the material here. I use Facebook as part of my ministry. That ministry is overseen by a local congregation. I don't post or teach anything here that they, as a whole, would disapprove of. That matters because a lot of what people call Facebook debate is really just spiritual disorder disguised as helpful correction. Here's my rule. If I don't own the post or the group and I haven't sat down and eaten a meal with the person, I don't argue. No dissent, no correction, no debate. You've got to earn the right to argue with somebody, I think. That comes through a relationship. If I haven't broken bread with you, I'm not going to try to correct your teaching on your own page. It's not my place. Now, there are exceptions, but they are rare. And even then, if I say something publicly, it's because I believe I can affect actual change. It's never about dragging someone or trying to look brave online. A lot of folks only ever show up when they disagree. They hide in the bushes, pounce. The first time you post anything they don't like, they'll be overly polite, but it's smug, passive-aggressive. It's a smug, passive-aggressive tone, and if you push back, they paint you as divisive or unwilling to be corrected. I use the block button and I use the unfollow button because I'm curating my own space on social media. 1 Thessalonians 4:11 and 12 is the basis for that. So that covers, like, if you're going to do if you know that Bob Smith is started teaching false doctrine at the 900 member congregation in your city, you may well decide to make a post about that, even if you don't have perceived quote unquote clout to do so, because it affects your backyard and your people need to know about it. Now, if you know Bob Smith personally and you live 3,000 miles away, you may yet make a post because you love him and your post might reach where other people's wouldn't. But if you know him and you love him, that's going to be the third, fourth, or fifth thing you've done after calling and begging and crying and writing letters.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't. If you, Jack, if you wrote an article that says, I believe every congregation that hangs the name Church of Christ on the door should bring in a baby grand piano and hire a piano concert person, a pianist, anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I just observe the Passover. There's people, first off, I trust God to put people in your life that will be a guardrail to keep you from going, to bring you back,
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't sat down and ate together. We haven't developed that person-to-person relationship together. And me coming at you at that is just going to sound like I'm just coming at you.
Yeah.
So those are that's how I've, in the last, especially 4 or 5 years, that's really how I've ordered myself on social media to try to not fall into that trap like I did in the past.
Yeah, because I mean, as you say, it's why do I got to take that on my shoulders? I mean, like there are people, and when a church has already gone that far, me making it so we talked about earlier, kind of the younger days or whatever, as a young preaching student who had all the answers and just kind of had to fix the church. It was when one of the biggest at the time, the biggest Church of Christ in America went instrumental. And
Oh.
I got on there and fired off an email, about like, this is the wrong thing to do. And I actually got a response, which I was kind of shocked about, but He did not say, shockingly, he didn't go, you're right. We're gonna reverse course. He didn't say that.
Yeah.
They've gone even further that way because that's what they're gonna do. And
Yep.
I mean, to your point, there's a congregation, literally the 5 minutes from where I worship. We passed it on the way. They're doing some shocking stuff, and
Yeah.
I know one of the ministers personally. I have eaten with him, things like that.
Yep.
We go way back. We keep to our parts of town. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, what can I do in that situation other than make our congregation the best one that is possible? So when people there's eyes are open, they have other options.
That's it.
And I hate what is happening over there. I've prayed that they kind of turn their turn directions, go a different
Oh,
way.
yeah.
But, other than that, this idea that I can police them, I can, make I don't know. I don't know. So sometimes social media really gives us an inflated sense of who we are and what we can do.
Oh, man. I've looked somebody dead in the face before when they gave me the down low on what another congregation is doing, and I just go, so should we go over there and break their thumbs?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, what do you want me to do about it?
Yeah.
It's not my circus, not my clowns.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to do about it.
I hate it. I wouldn't do it myself. I think it's really bad.
Yeah. Well, I use Forest Hill Irene, or the Forest Hill Church of Christ, all the time. They're so strong, have such a good reputation. I guess they don't mind me throwing them under the bus from time to time. But the last I knew about them, between their morning and evening services on Easter Sunday, they have somebody dress up in a bunny suit and let the little young ones, hunt Easter eggs either in the fellowship hall or out in the yard. You know what, Jack? I don't think they should do that. You know what I've never received? I've never received a communication from one of their elders asking my opinion.
Right.
So what do I do if I think they shouldn't do that? I just live my life, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's,
Yeah. And to your point of, even if they did throw a piano up there, it'd be like, that's, I'm really sad to see that.
It's very unfortunate.
And if you have a relationship with the minister or whatever else, maybe there's an opportunity to say, hey man, what's going on with that? Beyond that, I don't, it's not that things aren't wrong. It's not that there's not a time to oppose, but there also is what the brother said in the comment earlier about the church autonomy. You do have to believe in that to some degree. And that's also the autonomy to get it wrong.
Yes.
Like the autonomy. And again, going back to Jesus and the lampstands, let him handle that part.
You got that right. We got some really good comments. Before we get to them, we'll finish. We got 2 more questions. I thought there were 10. Anyway, I only see 8. I took a picture of it, though. But number 7, you've probably seen what I've seen. Folks are using spiritual language to carry out personal vendettas or stir up mobs. What patterns of abuse have you noticed when cancel culture attitudes creep into Christian spaces? And we may have already covered that, but
I think just briefly on that, I'll say it's very easy to try and build a coalition based on what you're against.
Yeah.
And so you kind of, oh man, these guys are the bad guys, and you kind of have to make up an enemy. And so, going after somebody, canceling somebody, whatever, that gets you your kind of foot in the door for that. And if you disagree with this person and I disagree with this person, then that's where we're going to draw the line. Maybe build it on what you're for. That's something that I'm against a lot of things, but I try and tell you what, not this, but that, rather than just, those guys stink. That's, I don't know.
Tom Holland told us a story. MSOP had him come down for a whole day session for preacher training. And he told a story about one of his earlier works, and one of the deacons was sitting in the car with him and said, Brother Tom, do we do anything right? And that deacon said, Tom, you'll never grow a church on what that church is against. You can only grow a congregation on what you're for. And I was like, wow, that is profound. Because I mean, if you're growing on what you're against, you're building on negative space.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just don't do stuff, then that's a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
We got to be for something, and that's what. Oh, dude, Matthew 23. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees! You pay tithe of mint, anise, and cumin, but you leave undone the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, faith. These ought you to have done, and not to have let the others undone.
Mm-hmm.
We have become somewhat pharisaical in that we're minding the mint, anise, and cumin, but we're forgetting the justice, mercy, faith.
Right. Yeah, and it's purely reactive. We don't
Yeah.
like that. Well, what do you like? And reactive means you have to wait on something to happen to react to it. That's why you can't grow, is you don't have a positive vision of where you're going. You're just running away from something else.
Absolutely. We are going to get to the comments, and this will be. Do you have 10 questions on your copy?
Yeah, there's a second page, but we kind of talked about it. You brought up the number 9 was about the John DeBerry and
Okay.
the Harding one. And then number 10 was, if we're going to deal with error faithfully without mimicking the world, how do we help Christians grow into people who can practice church discipline biblically without defaulting to digital mob behavior?
Ooh, let's answer that one last. Let's do this one right now.
Okay.
So, actually, we could probably combine 8 and 10.
Okay.
So you're in a public role, Jack. You teach, you write, you lead. How do you personally determine when an issue needs public response versus when it needs to be dealt with quietly and locally?
You know, that's a really good question. There's been a few things that sometimes there's like the debate of the week. There's just a
Yeah.
topic, and I think I've started a couple of those sometimes, but I've jumped in late on others. Everybody has a turn kind of starting them, right?
Yeah.
And I think, especially when I see one where there's a lot of chatter and there's not, I feel like there's a view that's not represented, and it's not hey, this guy he's a false teacher and I've got to tear him down or anything like that. It's engaging in the ideas. There was one a year or so ago. 2 podcasts about the exact same time came out with the idea of open communion. Everybody, visitors, children, serve the Lord's Supper to everybody who comes in, Christian or not.
Yeah.
I hit the roof.
You're forgetting what the Lord's Supper is.
Well, yeah, and it's like, do we have no value to the body of Christ, and you can eat and drink condemnation to yourself? Like, this is a big deal. Like, this is a privilege for the family.
Sure. Speak it, man.
So I lost my mind on that one, and so I wrote on that, and it wasn't, hey, I don't think I even named the 2 podcasts that talked about it.
Sure.
But it was like, hey, this is an idea I've seen out there. I know people have seen it discussed and heard, and you know what? My audience and their audience probably don't overlap a whole lot, so I don't even know if I was reaching people who did, but it's like, because these ideas are out there needs to be a counter to them. And that,
Yes.
And so I think there is a time and a place for that, but that also goes back to what we talked about earlier. This is very healthy that we can do that without calling for without making it personal, without taking down the person, false teacher or whatever. And so I mean, disagreement and even strong disagreement, there's a time and a place for sure.
Yeah, it's something that you just spawned a thought, or something about which you spawned a thought. I'll get it out. So let's take, for instance, I've already said there's some minutia about the drinking issue that I disagree with you about. I believe, and so this would be my litmus test. Do I say something publicly? If I'm going to say something publicly, and I'm going to offer a dissent on Jack Wilkie's position on something he holds, I want to do it to where if Jack Wilkie watched it, he wouldn't get angry at me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that old rule of say it in a way that the person who you're arguing against, when they hear you say it, would say, yeah, that's my belief. And
that's a big one.
I see that go bad so many times of people are attacking the straw man, making up a very weak version of what they want to attack and misrepresenting and things like that. And I mean, if either of those guys who had the podcasts read my article and wanted to have more of a discussion, absolutely,
Sure.
And I would be just as strong to their face as I was my thing. Like, no, I think this is really bad.
Absolutely.
And it's not a cult of personality thing. It's not a me versus them. If we can keep it about the ideas, that's a really important thing.
Yes. Something I'm teaching the members up here, I put together a six lesson logic course, and we're doing 2 weeks per lesson. There's the lesson, then the homework, and the next week we have pretty much an hour long, sometimes an hour and a half long discussion. And it's blown my mind. I keep telling them all the time, I've never done this. If this ain't any good, you need to let me know and we can fix it. Because I've never taught a logic class. But anyway, why did I say? Oh yeah, they're starting to see now that the way you learn the most is always assuming that a proposition is true, and crafting a scenario where it is, like steel manning the proposition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, if I said it is biblically authorized for a Christian woman in good standing with God through the covenant of Jesus to teach a mixed assembly of adult men and women, that's a proposition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you don't like me, you will hear that proposition as I'm authorizing women to teach Christian males and Christian females that are grown.
Right.
But if you're steel manning it, you're like, well, then if I trust him and I trust what he says is true most of the time, or at least it's researched, then how could this be true? So you start creating a scenario in your mind which that proposition is true. And I'm thinking about congregations that I've heard of in China where it's 10 women and some of their husbands will attend. And so you have these Christian women teaching and leading, singing and praying and all that in the presence of non-believing adult males. And so if you steel man the proposition, you're going to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And they're starting to get that.
Yeah.
And I think, and I only reached this because I was so poor at it for so many years. When I heard something like the proposition I just said, I'd write a comment, but like, well, here's 1 Timothy 2:12 and 2:8 through 12, and blah, blah, blah. Just quit going off half-cocked.
Right.
Practice 1 Corinthians 13 and assume the best.
Right.
And believe all things, but don't be blind, don't be naive either.
Right. Train to see things from all angles. And I mean, that's just classic debate prep too, is learn the other side as good as you know your own, and
yeah.
Just examine everything fully rather than, oh, I know this one, let me just, like you say, throw the verse down and then move on.
That's it.
That doesn't help us.
Cool. Well, could you read the 10th question there?
Yes.
I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry.
You're good. If we're going to deal with error faithfully without mimicking the world, how do we help Christians grow into people who can practice church discipline biblically without defaulting to digital mob behavior?
All right. Pretend that I asked that. Now give us an answer.
Yeah.
This is the interview yourself show.
There you go. So much of church discipline is local. It is, relational. It's in that sense. It's not the guy from so-and-so who, has really bad ideas. It is through relationship. And I there's a time and a place to disagree with people, to say they're wrong, things like that. As I was saying, writing my own side of that other argument. And I've done that with things before, to say, look, here's the counterpoint for anybody who's interested in this discussion. As far as the church discipline angle, I mean, I think there's a level, we already practice that as churches there. If we're going to have like an area wide, there's just certain ones we're not going to go hang out with, we're not having the fifth Sunday at the church with the band upstage, like that. That's
right.
So we already have levels of this that we practice, and that's pretty common sense. Same thing. So many churches do the summer series thing. There's certain preachers you're just not going to invite, as it should be, right?
Sure.
And so that is a way in which we practice that. That doesn't mean you have to go to his church and try and get him fired. Like, as we talked about, there's no effectiveness in that, but we've got to protect our own flock. And within our own flock, when there are threats to our own flock, really take a look at that. Really make sure. And I think this is one of the other things, is we're so good at policing the worldwide brotherhood. How many people in church don't show up, every other week? And we won't say a word to them. There's not any discipline practice there, or, sins that we know are going on in our church. Like, man, it's easy to tear down brother so-and-so who said that we're going to live on a renewed earth. keep it local. Paint your own fence first, kind of thing. Mow your own grass, whatever the analogy is there. That's my way of looking at
Yeah.
that.
I wonder if it's so easy to tear up other people's yards. It's because we ain't got to deal with it and try to get the grass to grow back.
Yeah.
Like I thought about the fella, it's easy to tear down so-and-so across the city. But if he were in our congregation, we might just let it slide because, we don't want to rock the boat and lose members.
Right. Or there is that long relationship, and you get soft on a doctrinal position, because
Yeah.
you might, whereas the guy, nameless, faceless guy on the internet who holds the same position, oh man, we can just throw rocks at that guy.
Yep.
I mean, yeah. So as you said earlier about hiding behind the screen, and all of those issues come to bear in this.
All right. Good answer. And there's nothing there. I mean, you said it. Let's run through these comment section real quick. Jenny Blackwell, good morning. Okay, so it's 11:11. We're going to go to, it's an hour and 11 minutes. So we're going to go an hour and about 15.
We can go about 5 more if we need to. Yeah.
Well, it's up to you. I don't want this to be a kidnapping situation.
No, you're good. I've got a little more.
Awesome. So Mike Oshness, good to Pipe 728. Good to see you. If we point out flaws in the congregation, everyone seems to think it's always negative. Yeah, and I guess it could be in a sense, but it depends on how you point them out.
I'll just say to that, I have to be careful to make sure to come back around and give pats on the back every now and then. The if it's nothing but critiques, people do burn out.
There's a little book called 1 Minute Manager that used to Tractor Supply made all of its members of management read. It's a little bitty old thin book. You can sit down and read it in about an hour, I feel like. I've slept since I read it, so if you find that to be the case, I'm not lying. I'm just wrong. But it's a really good, it's 1 Minute Manager. You spend 1 minute and you give praises publicly and you give critiques privately. And it's a really good book.
Solid.
Ashton Perez, thank you so much. Noah Theodore, Mammoth Spring, Church of Christ. Hey, boys, that's Barry Odell, by the way.
Barry?
We mentioned his name enough times. He showed up.
There you go.
No, he's a good fella. Him and Aaron Dotson, my closest confidants at the moment. Mike Osness, some don't even realize that they are participating in cancel culture. I believe it. Hello, Connie Barton. Good to morning you, evidently is what I was going to say. Good to see you this morning. George V. Williams, good to have you in the chat. Elizabeth Gibson. Hey, Alabama. I think the term systemic racism was a fun word to say to people. Said it not know. Oh yeah, they said it not really knowing what it means. I think that. What do you think? You think people really have their mind wrapped around some of these buzzwords like systemic racism?
The nice thing about that one is it was impossible to prove if it was or wasn't. It's like,
yeah,
I was just in the system. Well, where do you see it? Well, the system,
Yep.
Very convenient that way.
Oh man. Oh, it was I had to bite the tip end off of my tongue not to do a live stream about that. I try not to consume a lot of content from other creators because I want to put out content that's different than other creators.
Mm-hmm.
But I do notice stuff, and like I noticed you put out, I can't remember an article or just a community note or just a note where it's like, I expect an apology from some of these people, and I'm right there with you. Yeah. I got dragged, boy.
I still haven't seen those apologies from those guys.
No. Oh, I'm a racist, I promise you. All right. Hey, Alabama. It's sad that some of our brethren took it and ran with it at Christianity Now Streams. I don't know what we were talking about when you wrote that, but I probably agree with you. Hello, Sadie Hopkins. Thank you very much. Pipes 23. Hear your brother out. A lot of times we find that we can find common ground by just talking it out. Absolutely. And Deborah says that's what the laughing emoji is for. I don't see where I don't know what you're talking about, Deborah. And Mike Osness says butting into the workings of another congregation is a violation of the autonomy of individual congregations. We did talk about that one a little bit.
Great point, yeah.
And you can Photoshop and voice over anything now. Oh, have you seen the video, Jack, of RFK Jr., the deep fake that's out?
I don't believe so.
The only reason that you would know it's a deep fake is because he wouldn't speak that way.
Hmm.
It's scary real.
Yeah, you can't trust literally anything anymore.
No. Too many congregations can't mind their own business. They make judgments about others, calling them liberal, conservative, anti this or that. Yeah. I cannot stand the liberal and conservative. I guess we still have to use it because it's in our everyday parlance. But scriptural and unscriptural is a much more useful demarcation.
Right, and that lets you ask the question if somebody says they're unscriptural. Okay, how?
Exactly.
It opens the door there.
Yep. Yeah, I've been what is it? A rank, an ultra conservative or a rank liberal? I've been accused of both of those.
It's a good place to be. Yeah.
That's what I'm screaming. Hello, Brandon Myers. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Yes, I remember what we were talking about whenever you posted that. The constant markers and avoiders all tend to become a cannibalistic cabal. I think Barry fancies himself a poet.
He's right, though. I mean, like
ain't he?
Just one or another. It's going to be somebody's turn, and you see a lot of guys who, when it's their turn, they end up swinging really far left because they go, "Oh, this is really bad. This thing I was a part of." That's not good either, But
No.
they're almost pushed in that direction by when it becomes their turn.
That's it. Brandon Myers, also something you said earlier about social media. We have been at each other's throats way before social media, I think. Yes, that's why I was going to say the problem, but I think social media exacerbated it. Late, but here. It's kind of the way I feel. Mike Osnes, we got that. We don't hire an electrician to fix a faucet. That was whenever I was talking about not everybody I think is qualified to publicly make these posts. And then Brandon Myers, most of the time, if I really disagree with something you post, I'll message you directly or call you. It's not rare for me to find out that I completely misunderstood what was being said in the post. I think that deserves a little bit of a comment. I agree with you 100%, and I've done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had one just the other day. Somebody was like, "Man, they're really coming at me," and they're like, "No, I didn't mean it like that." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember when it happened, but it's been on live before when somebody's made a comment and I've read it on the air, and I didn't read the not.
Oh,
and I did a 5-minute. Like I said, I was very respectful because it was not something I ever thought I'd hear from this person, and I wish I could remember who it was because it was rather funny, and I was trying to be as respectful as I could, but that not being in there, like this made it actual damnable false doctrine. So anyway, and truth with proof. So when is the time? What if you're exposing darkness? Ephesians 5:11. I mean, we've covered that, it's, if you can actually do some good, that's the time.
Right.
And
that, with exposing darkness is interesting because it's like, okay, a church decides they're going to, throw an instrument on stage. You're not exposing anything. It's out there.
It's out there.
You drive down the street and you see the preacher getting, coming out of a hotel with another woman. There's a right way and a wrong way to handle that, and you are exposing darkness. That is, step in and handle that kind of thing. Or, hey, did you know that your preacher is going across the country teaching these crazy things? Yeah, I think there is a time and a place for that. Some of these things, it's not exposing at all because they know and they're participating in it, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's a good point. Good point. Aaron J. Dotson, what Jack just said, keep it about the subject and the issues instead of people and personalities. This is healthy thinking regarding otherwise godly and faithful people. We ought not indict the character of otherwise Christ-like people. Sadly, a lot of preachers out there indict people instead of discussing the truth or beliefs. We need to be careful, and I like the way Jack said that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Aaron's real good about that, man. I really like me, but there's a lot of days I'd rather be like Aaron. If that makes any sense. Ben Grady, sometimes you'll legitimately find out that you were wrong when you examine the sum of evidences on the other side and the other sides. on the other sides. Maybe we are the ones with some biases, color lenses on some things, maybe societally. It takes being waist deeper, huh? Takes being waist deeper researching the other views sometimes to understand it's important or see what you're missing at times, and or to fully understand where they're coming from and how to approach it in love. Yeah. It's empathy. It's empathy.
Yeah, I mean, as we said earlier, I want somebody to represent my side fairly, and I want to do that to them.
Amen.
I might represent somebody fairly and then totally disagree with what they said, and they're going to do it to me. But at least we're talking about the right things.
Yep.
When it's ad hominem, straw man, those things we talked about. What's the point of having that conversation if I'm just going to argue with the version I want to argue with? Like, don't even do it.
Did you know that I have it on good authority that you? Who are the two other young men that work with you? One of them's your brother, right?
Yeah, my brother
The
Joe
other is,
and Will Harrop, yeah.
Yeah, Brad Harrop's son. Well, you and those other two young men are actively promoting social drinking among young people.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we became the pro-alcohol people. Like, it had to be a half dozen or more times we said, do not drink, we do not drink, we don't think you should drink, it didn't matter. None of that mattered. So my favorite was a Facebook comment that said they're just wanting to defend their sinful lifestyles. Like, I have a bottle of Coca-Cola every now and then. Like, what is my sinful lifestyle here? Like, what
well,
are we
that harms
about?
your temple.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's, I guess
forget
that's
the
my
Big Mac.
Right, that's my sinful lifestyle is.
Yeah.
But, and that, to me, it was like, to that lady, she needs to be way more worried about her slander sin problem than anything I said.
I've said, look, I was convinced that if a Christian had Facebook, they were in sin. I still believe that there are going to be a lot of otherwise faithful Christians littering the bowels of hell because of Facebook.
It's brought a lot of people down. Yeah.
Yeah. The farthest end of my view hasn't really changed. I just know it's not sinful. All right. Hey, Alabama. This will be our last comment. Oh man, we need to be studying logical fallacies, Ben says. You got that right. All right. The keyboard doesn't always come across the way you mean something. Be careful about how you respond. In general, we read it the way we would mean it and not the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Never truer words have been spoken.
Great point.
Never truer words. Jack, I kind of don't want to stop the stream. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much. Do you want to say anything in close? Promote yourself, promote your book, tell the exciting work that you got going on over there at Focus Press.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Again, thanks for having me on. I think it's an important topic. As I said, when you start talking about these things at the church, a lot of people can relate. And I think it's very good that we kind of shine the light on these things. So I appreciate you setting it up. I write at my site, as I said, jackwilkie.com. Pretty easy to find me there. You can get on the email subscribe list for free. Church Reset is the book. Actually, supporting subscribers on my site get that digital copy for free, but you can get it on Amazon as well. And then, the other thing, I'm working on a new book on Christians' assurance of salvation. I'm really excited about that one. I think a lot of people need that. So subscribe to the site there for free, and you'll see when the book's coming out.
I find I preach so much more about Christian assurance. It comes up almost in every one of my sermons.
And it should. So many people just don't feel it, and they need to.
Pessimistic. God didn't send his son, and Jesus didn't die, so you might be able to get into heaven.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it.
Guys, I put the article for the nefarious and infamous. No, I shouldn't say nefarious, even jokingly. I put the link for the infamous article in the comment section. The Church of Christ invented cancel culture. Go read it. It's just as true today as it was then. Jack Wilkie, thank you for coming on. I don't even know how to shut this down. I've never had a get. Oh, there it is. It says end stream.
Mhm.
Jack, thank you so much. God bless every one of you. Y'all know what to do. Like, subscribe, and share. Go to Substack and follow Focus. Is it Focus Press or Jack Wilkie?
It's just
Church
me, yeah.
Reset?
Yeah, Jack Wilkie on Substack.
Jack Wilkie on Substack. Thank you so much. God bless you. Truth with Proof. Thank you for that commentary. And we'll get off here. Like, subscribe, and share. You know what to do. We'll catch you on the flip side.